Welcome everyone, it's Sherry Carroll for SimonsSaysStamp.com, and I have a fun little project for you doing some DIY no-sew flowers using the Simon Says Stamp arches and circle dies. There are 15 arches dies, and I'll be using these for the petals, and I can vary the size of the finished flower by choosing whichever die I want to start off with. I'll be using the circle dies for the flower centers and some small buds, and there are 18 of these size dies in the pack. For my tallest flower, I'm using the 3 1/4 size arch, and once this flower is assembled, it's about 6 1/4 inches in height. For this flower, I have cut 5 of the arches. I've also created a little template for myself just to trim down the edges of the felt so that I don't have so much bulk. To make my template, I folded one of the petals in half and used my scissors to cut up towards the edge. Once I got to the point where I could round that off, I turned that edge a little bit, and now I have a nice little petal shape. If you need to, you can go back in and clean up some of those sides. I've die cut a piece of cardstock and trimmed it down to that same petal shape to cut the rest of my pieces. I've cut a piece of cardstock using the 2 1/4 inch circle die, and I've put a dot in the very center. That way I will know where my center is, so when I place my petals in place, I can get a nice even placement. I'll start by adding a line of the hot glue along from that dot just out to the edge, and I'll place my first petal down, and then I'll press down that glue so it doesn't leave any bumps. I've set the second petal down but haven't glued it in place, and I'm just kind of measuring out for my third petal. And again, I'll add a line of hot glue, and then I'll push this petal right up to that center dot. And now that I'm getting my arrangement a little clearer, I can add my second petal, and I'll space that just right in between that first and third. And now for the last 2 petals, I have my spacing, so I'll just make sure that that's even like the one on the other side, and I'll press that down in place, and then I can add some glue for my final petal, and I'll place this one just in between those two to where I have even spacing around, and I can still see that center dot on my cardstock. For this flower, I'll be adding a smaller center, so I have some green felt here, and I'm using the 2 1/2 inch arch for these smaller pieces, and you can see that I can get 5 really easily on the width of one of my pieces of felt. So I have my little pieces, and I've also created a template doing the same thing by folding one in half and then trimming up the side and then tracing it onto some cardstock. And now by using my scissors, I can trim up the sides just to take off those edges of the arches to create the petals. With all my petals cut, I can place these so that they go right to the tip of the blue piece with a line of glue, and I'll press that down again so it doesn't leave any bumps. Next, I'll lift up the bottom of the petal and finish off the gluing. Now that I have my petals all glued down in place, I'm going to go around on some of those edges and just secure the green felt to the blue felt. I've cut another 2 1/4 piece of cardstock, and I'm just gluing this to the front, and this will give it a lot more stability. I have die cut a bright yellow piece of felt, and that's from a 2 3/4 inch die, so it covers the white cardstock. And next I'm putting on a bright orange piece, and I cut that with a 2 1/4 inch circle die. I'll be adding a little loop hanger at the top of my flower so it can be used on a pin board or a garland or even attached to a bag. So I've created a loop, and I could glue this down just as it is, but I'm going to place a knot right at the top. And then I can add a droplet of glue right at the top, right onto the felt, and make sure that I get those strings out of the way and just secure that knot down in place. And then I'll run that thread all the way down to the center, and I've placed some glue in the center, and I'll hold that down until it cools. And to finish off the back, I'm running my hot glue all around my paper circle and covering this up with another piece of yellow to match the size of the front. And then using the tiniest die, I've cut 3 pink circles that I thought would be cute, just as decoration on top of the flower. For my smaller flower, I've cut 6 pink pieces, and these will fit in a little bit tighter. I've used my smaller template that I created for the green that sits on top of that blue flower, and I'm just lining these up right to the dot to see how they will fit together and how tight I need to get these. So once I have my arrangement figured out, I can go ahead and start gluing these pieces down. So I know that they're going to touch pretty well to each other, so I'm going to start by just doing my first petal right up to my pencil line on my circle, which is a 2-inch piece of cardstock, and I have put the dot in the center like the others. So I know that I am going to put these tight, so I'll just start building around until I've finished completing this flower. And just like my blue flower, I've added a piece of cardstock to the back, and that is also a 2-inch to match the front. And next I'm adding in a 2.5-inch piece of light pink felt, and I'm going to go around that cardstock and add my glue and press this down in place. On top of that, I'm adding a piece of orange, and I've cut that using a 2.25-inch circle die. And for something fun on the front of this flower, I have cut another 2.25-inch piece of orange felt, and I'm using my scissors to cut slits into this piece, and I'm going up to the center. And I want to make sure that I don't separate any of the pieces. So I'm just cutting out little triangles basically all around the outside edge. And with this centered onto that yellow piece, I can add a line of glue and glue down each of those stripes. On top of my orange piece with the stripes, I'm adding a 1.25-inch pink circle, and I'm just going to attach these down so it sits right on top of those stripes. I finished these off by adding some white Nuvo drops, and I had a super fun time just figuring out where I wanted to add those highlights. I love this idea of mixing and matching colors and stacking lots of little elements on top of each other to make these great flowers. I think these could be used as a gift bag topper or also a pin board for a young girl's birthday that might be coming up. So I hope you've enjoyed this project, and as always, thanks so much for watching.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.